So I work on the PhoneGap team, which means that I work in mobile all day, which means I'm not very productive, but just bear with me. So INO has taught us the first rule of productivity, and that's to delegate. I basically found out about this yesterday, so which also brings me to my next point. If you're going to give a presentation, don't drink too much the night before. So I've basically broken every rule. Okay, so the other day, actually not really the other day. So last year I used to work for a startup, and we were really productive. We got all kinds of stuff done. And now I work for Adobe. Which doesn't mean that I'm not productive, but it's kind of interesting. So we've got this really large kind of layer of management, and management's always trying to be more productive, and they're always coming up with different ways to like be more effective in their jobs. So they had this long email thread about the tools they use to manage all the tasks that they have, and some people have really elaborate setups. I was blown away. There were guys that are using issue trackers in order to manage their own personal time. And other people were doing things like they had a combination of a wiki, and they were using different types of to-do apps. And basically it looked like their whole productivity was managing the tools to manage themselves. And someone's like, well, what are you using, Brian? I use a text file called to-do, and I keep it in a private GitHub repo. That's what I do. So text files are kind of awesome. It's a useful productivity tool. That's not really what I wanted to talk to you guys about. So has anyone here heard of the Agile release train before? Nobody's heard of the Agile release train? Wait, one guy says, yeah, a couple people have heard of it. So we ship software on a regular basis in the Apache Cordova project. And it's a little bit different than how most software projects ship. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you guys about. So in the Apache Cordova and PhoneGap projects, we ship a version every month. And so versioning is a tricky thing, because version numbers, when you think about it, the only reason a version number actually exists is so that you have an issue to look at in your issue tracker. PhoneGap, when we first released it, we didn't build something. We weren't like, hey, let's go build some software that fixes mobile. No, we were like, hey, let's hack on mobile. It looks like it's pretty cool. And we released it, and we added a version number because we thought that would be cool too. We didn't add it because we thought we knew what we were doing. And we ended up on version 0.8, I think in 2008. And we were still on version 0.8 in 2009. And it wasn't because we didn't want to ship new stuff. We were always shipping new stuff on master, but we just weren't incrementing our releases. And this turned into version hell, because someone would be like, I have a bug. And we'd be like, what is it? I can't reproduce it. What version are you on? Oh, no. So we realized that version numbers are really important for tracking issues. And in mobile, it's especially important because we're playing a game of cat and mouse against all these different vendors. So we're working with software that's being shipped by Apple, being shipped by Google, being shipped by Microsoft, being shipped by all these different vendors. And when they ship, well, they usually have long beta cycles. Like everyone here got to enjoy Android 4.0 beta, right? No. So they drop this software and they basically break absolutely everything, and then all your users are super pissed, and it's your fault. When Google dropped Mountain Lion, we had a guy who logged an issue in our issue tracker. He's like, PhoneGap broke in Mountain Lion, amateur hour. And my response was, it released half an hour ago, dude. Like, give us a bit of time. So version numbers are really important. You need them to track your issues, and you need them basically to organize your sprints. The other thing version numbers are good for, of course, is bugs. So we realized that not shipping new versions was probably the wrong thing to do. And then we, as all software developers, decided to do exactly the opposite. So we started shipping all the time, and we started shipping versions as quickly as possible. Because we have so many different platforms, we weren't able to ship all these different versions super fast. So we sort of settled on a 1-month release schedule. So once a month, we ship a minor version. So we do, right now, I think we're on 2.1, and 2.2 will come out at the end of October. And then if we have any bugs along the way, we'll ship patches as quickly as we can. And this has really worked to our favor. So in iOS 5.1, Apple broke local storage in the web browser. They said that the spec was ambiguous. So local storage sometimes will just delete the cache. So it's interesting that they said the spec was ambiguous. Persistent storage that sometimes isn't persistent. Whatever. So our users were pissed. They were like, PhoneGap sucks. You guys broke local storage. And we're like, well, actually, Apple broke it. That was in the middle of a release cycle. And when we landed on that bug, we immediately stopped all work on features, and we just shipped a patch. And we did that like in 2 days. And Apple actually incorporated that back into iOS 6, which is cool. But even better, we didn't have this sort of obsession with the features that we had for that particular release. Instead, we adapted to the market forces that were around us, and we shipped a fix, and we made our users happy. Had we been focusing on just the features for that release, our users would have been pissed, because their data wouldn't be saved on their users' phones. So having a fast cadence and focusing on these bugs has actually made our user community come to rely on us. They know that we're always going to be working in their favor and not just for our larger release cycle. And this is kind of like, it's a great picture, right? It's like, what could possibly have happened in that picture? That was me last night. No. Cadence. So you're shipping all the time, and this is great. We also decouple our marketing activity from when we release software. This is something that Adobe's still coming to grips with because they're used to shipping physical media, but we're not. We're shipping bits, and we're shipping open source code. We had a PhoneGap Day US on July 20th where we shipped 2.0, and we had this big event, and we talked all about all the features we worked on, and we shipped on that day. We shipped the minute that we wanted to ship, and the way that we did that is that we picked that date to ship those features, and those features that didn't fit, we put it in 2.1. Really simple. And so this is like really shocking to management. They're like, well, what are you going to talk about for 2.0? Well, we talked about all the stuff we did between 1 and 2. And that was a lot of stuff. That was a whole year. We were basically shipping a point release every month. And so we get all these different point releases out. We talk about the year. We can still make noise. And we don't have to couple our marketing activity. Our developers don't have to work 20-hour days and weekends, get sick, and then start shipping shitty code. So cadence is really important because it's momentum. In our industry, we always talk about sprints, and it kind of annoys me because software development is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Your software is never done. You're always going to be working on software as a professional, and if you're not, then you're probably out of business. That's all I got.
So my name is Jaime Wren. I work on the Dart project, specifically on the Dart editor. And so Dart is a new language. It was released a year ago at this conference. Very cool language. I'm not going to be talking about the language too much, although we'll actually see some code. Most of this talk is going to be a demo. We'll actually go in and actually look at the tool. So the project that I work on is the Dart editor. And it was a pretty cool opportunity to work on a new new source code editor for a new language. It lets you start from scratch and say, okay, what do developers need for a language, for a new language, right? Specifically, because everybody coming to the language is going to be new. And so it's pretty unique, and I'm going to just kind of walk through some of the things that we've had to emphasize and do in the language, and yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about. So the first thing, since everybody is new to Dart, is to make sure that it's easy for new people, right? So make sure that it's very quick to get bootstrapped and actually see a Dart application running in Dartium. And I'll show you what Dartium is here shortly. To understand the different integration points between the different pieces of Dart and the different tools. And since it is a new tool itself, an easy way to send feedback. That turned out to be one of the best features that we put into our tool. And hopefully, after a few hours or days, users are going to demand other things. And they're going to demand things like code completion and search and errors and warnings and quick fixes and things that they're already familiar with. Being that they're going to be developing in such a new language, it's going to be important that they've got kind of tooling that they're used to and kind of look familiar. And so let's see, in the slides I have a few screenshots, but we're just going to go straight to a demo and show all this. So, demo. So this is the Dart editor. And if you're familiar at all with Eclipse, you probably have recognized that this is an RCP. It's a set of plugins that we've written. We actually do have a plugin story, but it's not what we emphasize. We emphasize the Dart editor, the RCP. And if you're curious about why we made that decision, feel free to come find me. I'll be around. So right off the bat, like I said, send feedback right there. So we can send feedback. We can append logs with extra information, and anything that goes in here goes to the entire Dart editor's inbox. So it's a very quick way to iterate on the tool, especially for new users. We also have the preferences right on the top toolbar. And if you see up in the top right-hand corner, there's a little icon saying that there's actually a new version to be downloaded. And that's right here. So download updates automatically. And this, just like in Chrome, how you can say, OK, I would like to update now, and it shuts down the application and then reboots it. Similar kind of experience. Very kind of streamlined, especially compared to Eclipse, if you're familiar with Eclipse. And then one of the other things that we wanted, unlike Eclipse and unlike other tools, is really, we had the goal at the very beginning and stayed that way for a while, is no preferences whatsoever. There should be very few preferences, simply because to minimize the surface area of the UI and to really get the user experience right. And if you have too many preferences, especially at the beginning, then you can't do that as easily. So one of the first things I mentioned was it should be easy to get bootstrapped with simple some Dart code. And so with 2 clicks, we can do that. And so this is what you see when you launch the Dart editor. And if I click on the clock sample, it loads in the clock sample, puts it over here, and shows me the Dart class. So, sorry, the Dart file. And with another click, I can launch it. And it launches Dartium. Dartium is what we call Chromium with the Dart VM built into it. And it is running, and it shows me the frames per second down here, and it happened quickly. So let me go ahead and just close this down. Let's say that we want another sample to go start exploring. Let's go, I particularly like this one. It's the solar, and we can launch it. And again, the Dart VM starts up quickly. Dartium, Chromium starts up quickly, and the user is running Dart code. 2 clicks. Turned out to be pretty important, especially for trying to get to learn Dart code quickly. That was a hard requirement. So that's Dartium. That's the Dart VM. You can run your Dart code in the browser, in the VM. But one of the cool features of Dart is that we have the Dart to JS compiler. So it compiles the Dart code down to JavaScript for you, and you can do all of this on the command line. You can also do it inside of the editor. So from the solar, let's jump to clock. So you can simply go to Tools, generate JavaScript, and it'll go through and generate JavaScript. But if we want an even easier experience, and this is a little bit more complicated, but still relatively simple, is let's say that we want a new JavaScript launch, JavaScript clock, and we're going to let's say we want Firefox launching our JavaScript generated version of this application. So when you hit run, it launches Dart to JS in the background thread. It's going to print out the output, and it puts the generated JavaScript right next to our Dart file, and then it's going to fire up Firefox, and here we go. So as simple as that. So you've got the Dart editor, you have Dart going on, Dart to JS call, all kind of seamlessly integrated. So I'm going to quit Firefox here. Now those are all samples. It's also important to have some new content generated, be relatively simple. So a few clicks, we can do that. So hello, GOTO. Generates new content, and we're up and running. And this is the Hello World sample, and users are now developing Dart code. So there you have it. So that's the how to get bootstrapped inside of the Dart editor for the first time. So now I want to show some of the actual, some more advanced features. So as you move on, so search. So search experience inside of other editors, whatnot, can be cumbersome with lots of dialogues. I don't know if you're familiar with the Eclipse dialogues. You can specify, I would like to search for a particular field named this with this particular scope. Very powerful. We took a slightly different approach, which was to have just a search box at the top to say, okay, I'm searching for something, and I'm just going to start typing it in. And so from here, we can say, okay, this is using the information we know about the language and all the analysis we've run over the code. This is going to be a particular, class, or they may want to search for the text inside of all of the files they have open. In this case, I start to type in planetary body, and the class pops up, and that's actually what I'm searching for. So let's go to that. So each of these objects are the things whizzing around the sun, or around the planets. And so inside of the Dart editor, not only do we have different commands for quickly editing code, cut, copy, paste, all the kinds of standard things, we also have run a lot of analysis over to do things like the searching, to do things like call hierarchy. So let's say, okay, I'm trying to figure out this code. Let me figure out who calls this class, who constructs this class, to figure out where those planets are all coming from. And here's a method called start, and it's called 11 times from inside this. And if we zoom through here, we can see we've got our different planets. So one of the unique things about the Dart language is that it's optionally typed. So in this particular code, I can specify that Jupiter is going to be a planetary body. I can also specify that it's just a variable. In runtime, we ignore types. It runs faster. Again, I'm not going to get into the language too much. But inside of the tool here, what we can do is we can infer the type if we don't know it. So in this case, Jupiter has been declared as a variable. But when we come down here, we can say, OK, Jupiter. And I'm going to show us a little bit of code completion. Jupiter dot add a new planetary body around Jupiter. Now, in the source code, it's declared as a variable, but we've actually done some type inference here. So some pretty interesting, a little bit more powerful tooling inside of the editor. So here we can say new planetary body, and we'll get standard, nice, simple things that developers are kind of used to, code completion. So now we can go through, fill in our arguments, and we're good to go. So one of the cool benefits of programming in Dart, it is a web language, is the quick turnaround. And when JavaScript or any web developer is working on the web, one of the coolest features is that you can say, OK, reload the page. I just made a text change. Reload the page again. I just made another text change. And so I want to show that off a little bit. So I said earlier that the VM is pretty fast. And so we actually have this story in here. So let's run the solar example again. And I'm going to leave Dartium up right behind me. So I'm at around 46, 47 frames per second. Let me do a little bit of testing, stress testing perhaps, on my application. Let's say that I want to see how it performs with a few more asteroids in the asteroid belt. So I'm going to save. I'm going to come over here and hit reload. And now we're down to about 13 frames per second. And you can see all the extra asteroids around. So the quick turnaround of being able to say, OK, modify a piece of code, refresh my browser, is something that developers don't lose, even though they're working in a more strongly typed language than other languages on the web. And so again, I mean, we can do it again. So we can say, OK, what if we just have one asteroid in the asteroid belt, refresh, and no surprise, we're running at higher frames per second. So the quick turnaround is something I want to show off. And finally, since it is a VM, and we are calling out to it, we have a debugger. So I'm going to show off debugging support, and then I'm going to be out of time. So here's clock. We go ahead and launch it. And it's generating the JavaScript for me. Let's go ahead and make sure that we launch the correct clock. And there's a loop going through in my clock sample that's making sure everything's drawn. and every second it's called. So if I set a breakpoint, a debugger is going to pop up saying, you just hit a breakpoint. And from here, I can explore all the top level objects, fields, everything in the current object, and then local variables. Things like hover are also supported. And with that, my 15 minutes is about up. Thank you.
So what, we have 15 minutes, and I've got 64 slides. This will go totally smoothly, I'm sure. My name is Scott Hanselman, and this talk is called Scaling Yourself. You can see the 90-minute version of this talk up on my website. Feel free to go and Google for Scott, or Google with Bing for Scott. That would be also cool. That's Darth Vader on a cat. That's awesome. I've been in software for a very, very long time. This was something I've worked on, and I blog about community, and I've written some applications for the phone. I've got some books that I'm not very proud of. I've got a podcast that I'm proud of. I've got one called This Developer's Life that I do with Rob Connery that I'm very proud of. I've even got a video that I sell on how to be a good technical speaker. And a lot of people say, well, Scott, you're doing all this stuff. Why do you do it? Are you not sleeping? How do you stay productive? Why do you put all this effort into trying to be productive? And it's because I must dance. I can't stop. Whenever I think about stopping, I think about this little boy and how excited he is about doing what he's doing. Now, I try to give people advice on how to be productive, but when they don't take the advice, this is what I call them. Hopefully you'll take the advice. So it turns out that the less that you do, the more of it that you can do. This is the standard law of scale, right? Here's an actual graph that shows writing to dev null. See, the throughput goes up, and the latency is effectively nothing. Turns out that if you do nothing at all, you can do it infinitely. Now, the amount of information that one has to absorb has changed. In the old days, there was basically all this. That was all the information in the entire world. And then a little bit later, everything became 1,000 plus. Right? I mean, that's just emotional bankruptcy at this point, whether it be Google Reader or Gmail. If it says 1,000 plus, obviously, you just give up at that point. You should just declare that in the old days, I just had to know everything that was in those two books. But that was it. There was no internet. There was those two books, and I was alone in my mom's basement, and that was the sum of all human knowledge. And then the internet happened, and suddenly there's exabytes of information being created, and half of it is garbage, and a third of my day is wasted by interruptions. I'm completely overwhelmed, and we tell ourselves that we're going to be able to pull it off if we just work late tonight. Or, honey, it's just a really busy season for us right now, and just once March is over or once April's over, after the summer, we'll be able to spend some time together. And I just need to work late to catch up. This is a danger side. This is a danger sign. There's also this phoniness that happens, this feeling of being a phony, and I've blogged about this. I'm actually on the first page if you Google for phony. That was actually not the plan, but if you Google for phony, my smiling face is like right there, like ding. So feeling like a phony is this idea that I've got so many emails, and I go to work, I do my 8 to 5 or my 8 to 6, I go home, we make dinner, I put the kids to bed, and then what do? We work until 2 in the morning. And we do it because someone's going to catch us and realize that we really have no idea what we're talking about, and we're just lucky to have a job. Everybody feels like that. But the thing is, hope is not a strategy. Hoping that you're going to get past this is not a strategy. So what are some things that we can do? I'm going to juxtapose two words. One is called effectiveness, and the other one is called efficiency. Effectiveness is goal orientation. This is picking something to do. This is doing right things. Picking a goal and doing that goal. That's effectiveness. I'm juxtaposing these two words because in English they're close, and in other languages they're even closer. Efficiency. I was in Bulgaria giving this talk and went back and forth with this Bulgarian guy before the talk because they used the same word to describe these two different things. And we had to come up with like a word for effectiveness and then a phrase to describe efficiency. So for people that don't speak English as a first language, effectiveness and efficiency can feel like the same word. But efficiency is doing things in an economical way, process-oriented. So phrased differently, effectiveness is doing the right things, but efficiency is doing things right. That means effectiveness is picking a direction and efficiency is running really fast in that direction. When you realize those two things are different, it becomes an extremely powerful tool that you can use. This is an example of being wholly ineffective. I don't know why he thought that was a good vector to go on. Now, you've got all this information that's coming into your life, and I don't mean your email inbox. I mean the inbox of your life, your mail, do you have TiVo, like a DVR? You know, you can tell it to record Dexter, and then it just fills up with all the Dexter shows, right? Okay, you have that. That's an inbox also. Now, I'm going to say these things need to be triaged, and I use the word triage very specifically. I didn't just say need to be dealt with, need to be handled, need to be managed. They need to be triaged, because what does triage make you think about? It makes you think about the zombie apocalypse. Because when there's a zombie apocalypse and everyone's dead, we got to start triaging these bodies. We have this toe tag. Here's a toe tag. We have to go through all of these bodies that are in my parking lot and say, who's walking wounded, who is non-life threatening, and then who is just pulseless. Notice that they don't say dead. They say morgue, pulseless, or non-breathing. Because it would be just sad to say dead people. That doesn't mean that we grab the first person and we deal with that person. We triage them, we sort them, we sift them. But isn't it funny that an ad for Viagra, an email from me, and an email from Steve Ballmer are all peers in our inbox, sorted only by date? So there's basically three kinds of work that David Allen from Getting Things Done talks about. There's predefined work you set up ahead of time. There's work that's interrupting you, and this is where we get in trouble. There's that urgent work. It must be really important. It just happened. But the most important thing is the defining of work. So rarely do we find ourselves doing that. How often have you actually put on your calendar 1 hour of time to say, I'm going to sit down and think about what work I need to be doing? No, we panic and we look at our to-do.txt and we sort it, and then we just kind of freak out for a while, and then the to-do.txt gets larger. As Brian said, dropping it is so powerful. Do it, drop it, delegate it, let someone else do it, or defer it. But drop it is such an amazing thing to scale yourself. And when you're trying to decide what to drop, you can use Stephen Covey's quadrants. This is the importance axis, and here's the urgency axis. When something is both urgent and important, like a pregnant wife or an appendix being burst, you should probably do that now. If it is neither urgent nor important, you should dump it. But unfortunately, what happens is we spend our time on things that feel urgent, but are not important at all. But the urgency is an addiction. Trivia, not urgent, not important. Crises, urgent and important. Phrased differently. Phones, in person, people dropping by your office, both urgent and important. Twitter, I'm going to focus on Twitter, neither urgent nor important. But I don't think any of you guys work because you're always on Twitter. Now, this is a picture of a mouse with an electrode attached directly to his brain, and he just has to push that lever to stimulate the pleasure center of his brain. If he wants to feel better, he just pulls to refresh that feeling of excitement, that kind of direct pleasure center of the brain. He just pulls to refresh and just pull to refresh, and you get that feeling of something has happened, I'm really getting work done. Do you remember when there was just one set of footprints on the beach? That's when Jesus unfollowed you on Twitter, because you were tweeting too much. Now, all systems at work, including the internet itself, have flow control. So drop packets. Communication by its nature is fault tolerant. If you've ever had a conversation with someone over on a cell phone and a couple words drop out, you could still understand what they were saying, because communication as a nature is fault tolerant. Sometimes dropping the ball is the right answer. And when anyone ever calls me and suggests and asks me for suggestions on how they can get through this time in their life, and they list out all the things that they have to do, the first thing I say is, which one of these can you say no to? Even if you've already committed to it, what can you say, I can't do it? And for us as successful computer people, and I know we are successful computer people because we are here at a conference, which by its nature puts you at the top 1% of all computer people that exist because you came to a conference. That's amazing. You should feel really great about yourself for that. Is that saying no is virtually impossible to us. We love to say yes. We love to get things done. But you will feel so much better about yourself and you will get so much more work done when you can actually sprint and focus on something as opposed to juggling things. Also, there's this notion of psychic weight that people don't think about. And I brought up that issue of TiVo. We call it TiVo in the US, but the DVR. When this thing first came out, I could go and say, I want to watch Law & Order. And I hit record, get a season pass. And then suddenly there was like a whole Law & Order channel was there all the time. I was like, what a joy. This is going to free up so much time because I can watch TV whenever I want to. But then I realized that this was psychic weight that was pressing me down because, okay, we got like 7 Law and Orders on the thing. Okay, we'll put the kids to bed early tonight and we're going to bang through Law and Order and then we're going to get this thing under control and we're going to handle it. And then we'll be back on track. So somehow this TiVo, which was this gift from God, this was this amazing, glorious productivity thing, has now become the primary source of psychic weight in my life. So I think about the things that I want to get done. I want to think about, what are the 3 things I can get done today? What are the 3 things I want to get done this week, this year? And if watching the entire 7 seasons of The Wire is one of those things, then absolutely put it on your list. But if not, it should probably be the first thing that you drop. When you're going through your week, you need to have a vision on Monday of what your week looks like. And on Friday, you need to stop and look back on your week and think about the reflection. Was that a successful week? What could I have done differently? What could I change? And then you do it all over again the next week. I think that being busy is a form of laziness. Being busy is not thinking about what you should be doing so that you're not so busy. We find ourselves just being busy. It turns out that being creative and making something is the opposite of hanging out. I'm always impressed when people that I see tweet a lot suddenly stop tweeting, and then maybe a week or 2 later or a month later, they'll come back with some amazing new creation. It's like, wow, that person just made a list of the things that needed to get done, and Twitter wasn't one of them, and they went off and they created, and then they came back and they shared it with us. It's the opposite of hanging out.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's true. Turns out arguing on Twitter is the worst thing that you can do, and we're all guilty of doing it. No one has ever come up to me and said, "Man, I am so glad that you argued with me on Twitter. Completely changed my life. I've converted to Buddhism now, and I've got a smaller house and we've got a Prius." Never happens if you talk to someone on Twitter. And when we think about things like efficiency, take the things, all the data streams, this is homework for you, take all the data streams in your life and I want you to sort them, signal versus noise. What provides you value and what doesn't? This is mine. I'm a community manager, so my community does a lot of phone and Skype and video calling. So that's important. Last thing, Google Reader and TiVo. Most powerful tool that you have in your arsenal is mark all as read. Just do it. And never look back and don't feel bad and just feel the release of the psychic weight. Sort your list. See how I've sorted my work email specifically with bosses versus people who have CC'd me on stuff. The one email rule that you need in your life, the one thing that will fundamentally change how you think about email is if you put an inbox for stuff that you're CC'd on. And you train your boss. Next time your boss sends you a to-do and CC's you on it, don't do it. Don't do it, and then when he says, "Why didn't you do it?" "Oh, you CC'd me. I thought you were just informing me." He'll never do that again. Act on stuff that you are mailed directly, and stuff that's CC'd, it changes your life. Look at this. I took a 250 email inbox and chopped it down by 2/3 because the stuff in the inbox is important to me, and the stuff in inbox CC is not. I've extended that a little bit as a community person. Notice how the inbox external, my community, people who don't work for my company, they're important to me. I've answered all of their emails. Don't check email in the morning because if you respond to email, they will write you back. The number one way to get more email is to answer email. So don't put more energy into things that you don't want to. And remember, if you're the person who answers email at 2 in the morning, you've just taught your boss that you're the person who answers email at 2 in the morning. Maybe you're doing that because you want to move up at the company, or maybe you're excited, but you've just taught them that you're addicted to urgency, and you literally have. Here's a thing to let you know how addicted to urgency you are. How many meters are you in the morning when you're sleeping from your phone? And if you don't have to do anything other than roll your body like this to check your phone, then you have a problem. When you're driving, put your phone in the trunk. Can't text when your phone's in the trunk, but you can still Bluetooth. When you're sleeping, put your phone across the room. So if you really have to answer the thing, go across the room. But more importantly, try not checking email until noon, and you will be surprised at how much work you get done. Because what happens if you check email in the morning, you time travel. You wake up at 9, you check email, boom, it's lunch. And then you go to lunch, and boom, it's 2:30. And it's like, okay, it's 2:30, I'm going to start working now. That all happened because you checked email in the morning. Last one. I think I'm running out of time, right? How am I doing?
We actually have 10 more minutes because the others were so fast.
You're killing me. Well, I'll slow down then. Well, okay, so let's talk about conserving your keystrokes is a really important thing. If Brian emails me a really interesting question about, ASP.NET, as much as I like Brian as a person, and I enjoy his drunken emails, if he sends me an email and I send him back an exciting and long 5-paragraph with a code sample email that solves his problem, I just gave him the gift of 10,000 of my keystrokes. But there is a finite number of keystrokes left in my hands before I die. And I am never going to get those keystrokes back. And I've just gifted them to Brian, and I don't even know if he read that email. So what should I do to multiply these keystrokes, given that there is a finite number of those keystrokes left in my hands? I write a blog post, and I mail him the link. And then after I'm dead, my keystrokes multiply. Every time I get a page view, that's 5,000 keystrokes that I did not have to type. You should never write a long email to someone, never more than 3 or 4 sentences. Anything longer than that should be on a blog or a wiki, or it should be in your product's documentation, or it should be on a FAQ or a knowledge base, or anywhere in the world except email, because email is where your keystrokes go to die. Are you guys familiar with the Pomodoro technique? Any Pomodoro people here? Anyone have their official Pomodoro timer? The Pomodoro technique is this amazing way to do personal scrums. Isn't it funny how the project manager on your team is the one with 1,000 emails that are unread in their inbox? It's funny how that works out. None of the programmers have any email, but the project manager's got basically email bankruptcy. Thousands of emails, can't manage their own life, but they're managing your project. Try running your life as a scrum. Do little tiny work sprints. Pomodoro is a unit of time. I think it means tomato in Italian. And the idea is that you have this timer, and you set the timer, and you put it down, and then you focus on one thing. No multitasking. You focus on one thing for 25 minutes. It's amazing. You won't be able to do it. You'll be vibrating with the need to multitask, and you'll just be like, and then you're like Alt-Tab, and you're like, whoa, what happened? And then suddenly you're on Reddit, and you're like, I didn't even touch anything. My brain just took me to Reddit. I don't know how it happened. When that happens, when you've interrupted yourself internally, just write it down. Just tick. Put a tick. So imagine you have a sheet of paper. It says, all right, I'm starting a Pomodoro. I'm starting a 25-minute work sprint. Every time I interrupt myself, I put a tick. Just to be aware of it. Just to think about it. To be aware of the number and type of interruptions. And then look back and reflect. And you say, I interrupted myself 6 times in 25 minutes. And you're going to get numbers like that. But then you'll do it again, and you'll interrupt yourself twice. And then you'll interrupt yourself once. And then you won't interrupt yourself at all, and a Pomodoro will feel like that. And then you'll start thinking about a productivity in your life as how many Pomodoros that you got done in a day. And you'll say, man, that was a 4 Pomodoro day. I got a lot of work done. How many hours was that? It was like 2 hours, but that's not the point. It was like so productive because you were sprinting. Turn off Toast. You guys know what Toast is? Fred is online. Thank God. Skype, I don't know Fred has a birthday. I don't even know who Fred is, but Skype felt the need to interrupt me with a piece of toast that popped up on my screen. Turn all that stuff off. Notifications, background processes, anything at all that is going to keep you out of your flow. Do you see Usain Bolt texting while sprinting? No, because he's sprinting. That's why it's called sprinting. Remember that anything important that happens in the world, in the news, in your life, in your work, will come your way many times. If there's another 9/11, somebody will tell you. You probably didn't learn it by hitting refresh on your favorite news site. Something might happen. Someone famous might die. Is Lady Gaga dead? Is she dead? F5, F5, F5. Try to remain in your flow. Be wrapped up like a child is in the thing that captures your attention. Get that excitement back. And that excitement does not involve alt-tabbing over to Gmail. Multitasking is a myth. This is funny, but multitasking does not work. The optimal number of threads in any system is 1 thread. That is a computer science fact. And if you think you can multitask, you're wrong. And I hate talking to people. I totally can multitask. You can't. It's biologically impossible to multitask. The best multitasking you can do is think about a problem and then sleep. and then let the background threads do that work for you while you sleep, and then wake up in the shower with the answer. That's like the only multitasking that I even know about. But all you're doing is wasting time task switching, and task switching causes time. It's a context switch. You ever been working on something, and the phone rings, and you're mean to like your dad? Why was I so mean to my dad? Well, he called you at work at 3 in the afternoon and you were totally focused on something. And then afterwards, like, I'm sorry, I was really working on something. Well, what could I have done? I could have turned off the ringer. And then I'm sad for like 10 or 15 minutes. That's the context switch. As I get back from that phone call that I screwed up, back to the work. Okay, what was I thinking about? It's context switching. Context switching doesn't work. Here are some things that you can multitask on, and they are few and far between. And they start with walking and chewing gum. But the number one way that I do multitasking is I work out while listening to podcasts. I never have time to listen to podcasts. Oh, no, I'm so busy. Well, if you're working out, listen to podcasts. I like watching TV. I unapologetically love to watch TV. And if I tweet about it, people are like, how do you have time to watch TV? Well, the rule is I'm only allowed to watch TV while I'm working out. So as soon as I stop working out, TV has to go off. So I got the iPad, and I've got like 7 seasons of The Wire, and I just run towards the iPad. It's like a carrot and a stick. That's what I've promised to do. If I'm going to be watching a show, I am always moving. There is no actual sitting on your ass watching TV for me. You have to work out. And if you make that rule for yourself, you realize that that is really great multitasking. Commuting and reading. If you commute on a train or in some way that doesn't involve driving a car, you can do that. Utilize your idle and waiting time. The iPhone has completely changed the way that I poop. I have no idea what we were doing in there before. Weren't you thinking, this is completely unproductive time, you know? And then the iPhone came along and Instapaper, and now poop time is good time. We set up these guilt systems. My friend Kathy Sierra has this great blog post about a guilt system. We have these. You know, think about the pile of books that you have. I'm not going to read The Ruby Way this week, but The Ruby Way has been on my desk for 3 years. And what happens is I move it in the stack. So every once in a while, I'll look at the guilt pile, the monument to my own stack of failure, and I'm probably not going to read all these, but I'm going to move The Ruby Way a little higher, and then I'll move the CSS3 down, and then I'll probably only read this much. But the guilt pile persists. I have actually had guilt piles last so long that the technology has become obsolete. From the moment I got the book from the publisher until it eventually just went out of business. Think about this for a second. And this guy uses it in the context of making money. If it is not helping me make money, it's mental clutter and it's out. Now let's get rid of making money. If it's not helping me to, what is your goal? Spend time with your kids, pay off your house, grow your business. In any decision, if you're going to do something, is that helping you with that blank, whatever that blank is for you? I stopped caring about my career when I had kids. So everything that I do, every decision that I make is how I can get home to my 4-year-old and my 6-year-old faster. I'm going to be going to a conference in Poland tomorrow morning, and they're mad at me because I'm going to be doing the conference and I'm going to leave that afternoon. And they want to show me their beautiful city. And I think that that's great, but the thing is, their beautiful city will be there in a couple of years. But my 4-year-old only has 52 weekends in his 4th year. And every weekend I miss, that is a weekend in his 4th year that I will never get back. So I'm going to be home for dinner on Friday.
Awesome.
Thank you, sir. Rock on. So here's your homework, my friends. I want you to audit and sort your sources, the things in your life. I want you to think about scheduling work sprints. Turn off all distractions. Think about your inbox. And then go look at your personal toolbox. Notice that I didn't talk about Evernote or any of these fancy systems. It all speaks to what Brian was talking about. You can spend more time reading productivity books and making productivity systems when maybe all you need is a to-do.txt. Maybe what you really need is the will to do it and the recognition in your mind that there is a difference between being busy and doing the work that you want to do. You can find all of this stuff and a longer version of this talk up at hanselman.com. Thank you very much. Was that enough time? Oh, yes, sir.
Why do you need the week plan and the day plan? Why not just the list of things that you have prioritized and then take them from the top?
So,
Otherwise you get a guilt when you don't.
Sure. So why do we have a week plan and a day plan? So again, with every single thing that I've talked about here, pick the thing that makes you happy. This is not a religion. This is a perspective. And if you have a system that works for you, rock on. So none of this is dogma, okay? It's just a thought. But my opinion is that the number 3 is a great number. 4 or 5 is too much to hold in your brain, too much to focus on. 1 or 2 is not really working hard enough. 3 is a great number. So every day I wake up and I say, what are 3 things that I can do today? I may have 1,000 things to do today, but if I did 3 of them, I could look back on the day and say, that was an awesome day. Maybe it's 2, but whatever works for you. 3 is a great number. It's a nice round number. Then it allows you to scope things. But the 3 things you would try to get done in a single day are different than the 3 things you would get done in a week, because those things would have larger scope, right? Fix bug number 3, that's a day thing. Release version 1.2, that might be a week thing. And a year thing might be, double the size of the business. You can pick the amount of time that you want to spend on these things, but the rule of 3 allows you to just arbitrarily chop things up and accomplish something so that you feel good about yourself. So if the process for you is 4 or 10 or 20 things, whatever, but the point is to end the day without guilt, to end the day without psychic weight. Because, maybe I'm just talking to myself here, but I truly believe that we have had that feeling at the end of the day where I didn't do a damn thing today. I dicked around on Twitter, and I was at the client's office, and I was on the toilet for half an hour, and I'm billing the guy, so that was like a 30 euro poop. And we've had those days. You know what I mean? We don't talk about them. No one puts a microphone on and says that I feel like such a phony today. So what do? We put the kids to bed, and we try to make the day not suck from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. We don't talk about it, we don't tell anyone about it, and we know who the other people are, though, because we see them on chat, because they're the ones with the green dots, while all the yellow dot people are asleep on corporate chat. And those green dot people, he's always up at 2 a.m. And I know he has young kids, and he's probably really freaking out, too. So why do I pick 3? Because it's a round number. Good question. Right, so the gentleman is pointing out that sometimes when you separate email like this, you are going to miss context. Yes, you absolutely will miss context. And the question is, have you put yourself on a treadmill at work that is a sustainable treadmill? If you have a situation at work right now where you have too much responsibility or too much email or too much whatever, and you're worried about missing out on context, then you need to change how your job is. You have too much to do. You shouldn't need to be constantly checking email for fear of keeping up. It's that very fear that I think we just need to let go of. I've got probably 500 emails. I usually have 0, but I'm on vacation, right? I'm here in whatever country this is. And you see how that works? Sweden. Yay, Sweden. No, the point is that I'm watching people they give their talks and then they rush back to delete email. And it's just like, oh my God, has my job really come to this? Is this my job, deleting email? So I actually end up having trusted aggregators, people who are not willing to drop things. So I'll call them and I'll ask them what's going on. Isn't that funny? I used to have 1,000 blogs that I would read, right? And then who's the greatest blog reader in the world? It's Robert Scoble. He's always talking about how many blogs that he reads. So I finally decided I'm not Robert Scoble. He's a freak. And it's not healthy to keep up on that many blogs. So you know what I do? I read his blog. So I took the 1,000 blogs that I read and I picked 5 link blogs. I found my Scobles, and I read those 5 blogs, and they give me an aggregated news. It's like why we listen to the BBC News on the hour, because it tells us what's going on, so I don't have to watch all the other news. Find your aggregator inside of the company. Who is a person who can tell you what's going on, who can keep you up to date? I do less emails, but I actually have more one-on-ones with my boss. I told him unapologetically, if you're making me delete email, if deleting email is my job, then I'm going to get less work done. So let's have more 15-minute stand-ups, one-on-ones. You tell me what the hell's going on, and then I'll be doing work, because it's his job to read all of those emails. So drop the ball is what I'm telling you to do. Okay? Fantastic question. Any other questions? What a great crowd. What a very relaxed and mellow crowd. Lunch. Let's eat. Thank you.